Welcome, everyone. This webinar is organized by Swords to Plowshares and is designed for grantees of the California Women Veteran Project and the Swords to Plowshares Re-Grant Program to gain a cultural understanding of the women veterans they plan to serve through the grant. Women are the fastest growing cohort in the veteran population, and over the next 20 years, women veterans are projected to double in ranks to an estimated 15%. Many women veterans are accessing care from providers in the community. Therefore, it is crucial for community behavioral health providers and advocates to have a cultural understanding of the unique issues and experiences of women veterans. Please note, this webinar is being recorded. Anna Fortes and Kelly Jenkins-Poltz serve as program analysts for the Department of Labor, Region 9, Women's Bureau Office. Anna Fortes is an expert regarding the special concerns of women veterans. She has presented on the topic of trauma-informed care for women veterans before regional organizations that serve women veterans. She has also worked collaboratively with federal and local leaders to host events educating the public on equal pay and workplace flexibility issues and serves as a resource to community leaders. Kelly Jenkins-Poltz is an expert on the topic of equal pay for women and has served as a team leader for the Women's Bureau staff and a resource to community leaders. She conducts outreach and leads presentation for employers, consistently leading the Bureau's efforts to help employers implement new policies and programs for workers. Over the last 3 years, Kelly has become knowledgeable about the special concerns of women veterans and has presented on the topic of trauma-informed care for women veterans before multiple national and regional organizations that serve the homeless. During this webinar, you'll be asked a series of poll questions. This information will provide the presenters with valuable feedback about the participants. Please type your answer when prompted in the poll answer box to the right of your webinar's display. You may also type a question to Anna, Kelly, Swords to Plowshares staff, or even another participant at any time. Simply type your questions in the questions box and your chat comments in the chat box on the right side of your webinar's display. Please use the chat box to post messages to the organizer or to report any technical difficulties. At the end of the presentation, we will review the questions and comments posted. All participants will be given a chance to ask a question of Anna or Kelly virtually by raising your hand when clicking on the small hand icon under the list of attendees next to your name. After the presentation from Anna and Kelly, we will take time to discuss the Wellness Grant and upcoming reports. Kevin Miller, one of the Swords to Plowshares organizers, will be online also during the webinar to provide technical assistance during the presentation. Without further delay, please welcome Anna Fortes and Kelly Jenkins-Poltz.
Thank you so much, Kelly, and to Star and Kevin for organizing this webinar for us today. We are absolutely delighted to provide this information and really look forward to engaging with each of the grantees on this special project. I'm going to begin by talking a little bit about one of the Women's Bureau programs, the Trauma-Informed Care for Women Veterans. In addition, my colleague Anna Fortes is going to be on the chat function of the webinar today. And if there are questions that you'd like to ask during the presentation, please feel free to use the chat box. Anna will be monitoring those questions, and she may be able to respond as we go along. But definitely we'll pause at the end for kind of a further dialogue and more questions. Okay, I'm trying to advance my screen, but it's not advancing.
So Kelly, if you will click on the slide with your mouse, and then you can use your up and down arrows or advance in any other way.
Okay, it's still not working. There we go. Sorry about that, everyone. So the Women's Bureau is a federal agency within the U.S. Department of Labor. We are a very old agency. We've been around since about 1920. We were formed by an act of Congress to listen to the concerns of women in the workplace and provide information on policy and programs to assist women. Over the years, our mission has remained the same, and the issues have changed only slightly. The issues for women are remarkably similar over the years, although definitely the ways we've addressed them have changed. Preparing women for higher paying jobs, especially jobs in the trades, in the STEM fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, have been something that we have been addressing from the very beginning. Helping women veterans reintegrate into the workforce is a new area of focus for us, and one we'll be talking about more exclusively today. Promoting equal pay is a long-standing program of the Women's Bureau. And promoting workplace flexibility and helping vulnerable women are some of our other areas of focus. All of the programs that are listed here on this screen, you can find a lot more information about on the Women's Bureau webpage. And Ann and I hope to stay in touch with you after today's webinar so that we can provide these additional resources for you in the course of the other programming that you provide. But today I'm going to focus our remarks on the Homeless Women Veterans Project. The Women's Bureau got involved in this project when the former Secretary of Labor, Hilda Felice, was concerned about the increasing statistics showing more and more women veterans becoming homeless. And she asked the Women's Bureau to make this a special area of our focus and to find out what was really driving the increasing numbers of women veterans becoming homeless. We did a series of listening sessions, probably about 30 all over the country. Here in California we did 3. And from those listening sessions, we developed a series of policy and program initiatives. Some of the policy initiatives including providing women-only stand-downs around the country. Many of you, I hope, have participated in the one that we did in Long Beach. And although the Women's Bureau was the initial organizer of that stand-down, it has since become an independent kind of stand-down that is, for the last few years, been organized by U.S. Veterans Initiative in Long Beach. And so that's typically how the Women's Bureau will interact with some of these programs. Many times we'll provide funding for a kickoff event, and then organizations will come in and take more ownership of it. We also learned that there was a specific interest among women veterans of having more gender-specific programming and funding. So on a number of different areas, we've been working with community providers to do just gender-specific programming for women veterans. That might be, for instance, a healing and hiring fair that is specifically targeted to women veterans seeking jobs. Or it might be, a special session for single-parent women veterans. Just working more closely with organizations to provide very gender-specific programming. The Trauma-Informed Care Guide for women veterans who've experienced homelessness is one we'll be talking about more today. But in addition to the guide, there is a whole web-based training that is available up on our website that you can refer back to or that you can share with other organizations. The results that came out of our listening sessions, what we learned from women all over the country is that women veterans frequently will not identify themselves as veterans. And this is important to remember because if you're trying to identify who are women veterans coming through your door and you ask a question on, say, an intake form, are you a veteran? A lot of women veterans won't respond yes. But if a simple change to the question is, have you ever served in the military, that kind of a question will elicit more of a response from the women. That was probably one of the biggest kind of aha moments we had from those listening sessions. Another common thread was that the women veterans really internalized some of the self-determination that they learned while they were in the military, and that was to be strong and take care of themselves, which in many ways socialized them to not seek help, to really internalize challenges when they experience them. And that carries over until when they get out of the military and they do experience problems. they're more likely to feel like these are things they have to take care of themselves rather than to reach out and to seek help. Women veterans also told us that they were overwhelmed with the many, many programs and services that are out there to serve them, but there's not being very effective means of accessing the services or finding sort of a one-point place of contact for the services. And because they were overwhelmed, they often didn't even know how to access some of those benefits. A lot of the women told us that as they were leaving the military and doing sort of the 3-day sort of briefing session that releases them finally from service, that it was just information overload. And so even though they came out with a huge packet of materials, they were just overwhelmed and didn't really know how to dig into those resources and to access them when they needed them. The other big, big concern that came through the listening sessions was the number of mental health services that were often related to the service itself. There were very, very high rates of military sexual trauma, and that's that little term that has been, acronym that's been developed, MST, to refer to experiences in the military of sexual assault or rape while they were serving in the military. And those were often experienced not only by the soldiers and sailors that they were serving with, but sometimes through their commanders. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Sometimes I've heard it referred to as just PTS because it is a very common form of a very common experience that women in the military talk about. And also, we're learning that men and women process trauma a lot differently, and that women seem to be more likely to experience post-traumatic stress than men. The Trauma-Informed Care Guide was developed in response to some of these things that the women veterans told us. What we also heard from the women veterans is that rather than go to the VA for their services, they felt more comfortable turning to a women's organization, to a faith-based organization, or to a community-based organization. In other words, they were going to organizations that had really strong reputations for good services, particularly for service for women, but organizations that were new to the experience of veterans and didn't really quite understand how that overlay of serving in the military and having special community needs as a woman overlapped each other. And so the Trauma-Informed Care Guide was developed to address that very unique perspective and to provide our community-based organizations with some really specific steps on how to serve the women veterans, how to make sure that the environment where they're seeking support and treatment is really targeted to really help them. The Trauma-Informed Care Guide has an organizational self-assessment, and it's really a fabulous tool for helping an organization take a snapshot of where they are on a best practices continuum of providing services to women veterans and providing resources to help the organization really target some new areas to grow and to increase their effectiveness. The organizational guide also gives you a lot of information to help you just sort of understand where the women veterans are coming from and some of the statistics that are common for this population. Women veterans are 20% of all the new recruits for those in the military, 14% of the current military, only 8% of the entire veteran population, but a growing, the largest growing share of those in the veteran population. Another distinguishing characteristic about women veterans is they're much more likely to be single parents than male veterans are, and they're much more likely to be younger than the male veterans. These are some of the voices that came out of our listening sessions. Women veterans told us that because the term veteran most likely conjures up the image of a man, that they are frequently forgotten. And it's one reason why they don't kind of identify as a veteran, because that image that comes to mind is usually a male face. And sometimes they don't even realize that they are veterans, especially if they served in non-combat roles. One of the more poignant comments was from a woman who told us that she would attend church services, and on Veterans Day, when the pastor would ask people who were in the military to stand and be recognized for their service, she never thought that that meant that, you know, she should stand up and be recognized. One of the other things that women veterans who had experienced homelessness had in common was that they had very, very high rates of some type of trauma even before they went into the military. And in some cases, the fact that they had been in very vulnerable situations before military service was what drove them to look to the military as a new opportunity to broaden their horizons, change their life, and kind of start over. So you can see from these statistics that, you know, very high proportions of the women had already experienced childhood sexual abuse or some kind of physical abuse, and that many of them had experienced not only as children but as adults. These prior experiences with assault had made the women, you know, not only looking to, you know, new avenues to change their lives, sometimes running away from bad situations, but because they had already experienced some type of assault, it made them much more vulnerable to assaults while they were in the service. After their military service, the women told us that they were, you know, very likely to have experienced a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder. 1 in 3 of the women told us that they'd experienced some type of rape or sexual harassment or sexual assault while they were in the military. Another thing we learned in talking with some psychologists, even those at the VA who are treating women for military sexual trauma, is that even if someone isn't actually raped, but they've just experienced a very high level of sexual harassment, that threat of being in danger, that threat of somebody crossing the line and doing more than just verbally assaulting them, but actually assaulting them physically, creates the same kind of response in the brain as if they'd actually been physically assaulted. So when the VA and when experts in military sexual trauma treat women who've experienced sexual harassment, the treatment is about the same as if someone's actually been raped, because the way the brain processes that experience is almost the same as if they actually had experienced a rape. And that was kind of new information to us that we wanted to share with those of you working with those who've experienced sexual assault and other forms of military sexual trauma. The women told us that the experiences of trauma made it difficult after they got out of the military. If they had left an abusive situation prior to military service, the ties coming back to their family were not as strong, and so they didn't have great support networks. If they were parents and had young children they were supporting and they ran into trouble, you know, meeting their bills, they often had trouble finding a place to live that could take both them and their children. So they were frequently telling us that the ability to sort of handle everyday issues, everyday situations became very, very complicated by the level of trauma they had experienced and not been able to successfully resolve, and that experience of trauma itself contributed to the them becoming homeless. And we feel that that's sort of at the root of why female veterans are more likely to be homeless, because they're more likely to have had these experiences in their background that are still unresolved and that they need assistance with. Some other statistics about women veterans is that they have much more likely to be a much lower income than male veterans. And, going back to looking at income for women in general, that's true for women across the board. Women earn still to this day about 77 cents for every dollar that a male earns. And for women veterans, that was true also, that they were much more likely to have a lower income than a male veteran. They were also more likely to be unemployed. You can see it, by this statistic, that even compared to the population of women veterans had an 8.3% unemployment in 2012 compared to 7.7% for women who were non-veterans, and to an unemployment rate of 6.9% for male veterans. Additionally, the women veterans were much more likely to be from a racial minority group. A lot of women of color are serving in the military. Women veterans told us that they have a multitude of needs, everything from job placement to services to support them as single parents, a great need for advancing their training and their skills. They need a lot of help in understanding how to translate their military experience into the civilian employment world. Great need for resolving some of the military sexual trauma and post-traumatic stress they experience. And that the resources available to them are complicated to access, especially if they're single parents and they're looking for places they can afford to live that are suitable for children. They need help with transportation. Legal assistance, that was an area that a lot of the women veterans had experienced if they got into minor scrapes with the law, and it could be everything from unpaid parking tickets that just sort of accumulated over time and resulted in maybe their car being impounded. So just, multitude of issues that would build upon each other and make it very, very difficult for them to just cope and get through a day. Women veterans said that what was most helpful to them were networking groups that made them feel safe. People that understood who they were, where they'd been, and could help them with where they needed to go. Now, if I wanted to take you more into the definition of why dealing with trauma was so important, I wanted to share this, this sort of issue of how we define trauma and why it's so important to address. Any of you have been through probably experiences in your own lives where you can relate to trauma. I know for me, experiencing living in Southern California and being in a situation where, we go through evacuations from time to time due to fire is probably, an experience that I could personally relate to trauma. And I'm sure that most of you have kind of experiences in your own lives that can help you relate to it. But what the women veterans told us was that trauma goes beyond just sort of normal stress, in that it overwhelms all of your senses. It makes you feel vulnerable both physically and emotionally, and it leads to feelings of helplessness, fear, lack of control, and it really changes your perception of your ability to take care of yourself and your view of others and how they can help you. People who have stress in their lives will frequently carry that stress around for months, maybe even for years. And it can come back to them. It can be triggered by any number of things. Women veterans told us that the kind of symptoms of post-traumatic stress they would experience could be triggered by things like being around someone who reminded them of someone who may have assaulted them. and that sometimes they would avoid situations that would remind them of those past experiences. For instance, I knew one woman veteran who told us that she would never get on an elevator with a man, regardless of who the man was. But, you know, she just knew that being in a closed environment like that with a man would trigger her immediately. And so she would avoid, you know, taking the elevator. She always took the stairs. Women veterans also talk about being hyper-aroused. I've heard this often described as a feeling of being locked and loaded, where, you know, you can't even sleep through the night because you're waking up frequently with this need to get up and, you know, make sure all the windows in your home are locked. Or, you know, one veteran even talked about the need of having to physically patrol his property and just make sure that, you know, the house was secure before he could go back to sleep. So, you know, it's definitely a situation that affects both men and women, but that sense of always being on guard, on alert. The flashbacks, the nightmares, you know, can make it very, very hard to get a full 8 hours worth of sleep. And even lack of sleep is something that can further exacerbate the stress. Veterans have also talked to us about just feeling numb from the stress and kind of disengaging from what's going on around them because they are so overwhelmed with what's going on internally. And as an example of this, one veteran told us that, you know, even a normal experience like going to the grocery store could just overwhelm her because, you know, in her mind she is carrying around sort of these deep wounds of, you know, being in situations where people's lives were in danger. And, you know, people would, you know, react because they were trying to either save themselves or save, you know, their colleagues. And so she had, you know, this trauma of always feeling like, you know, she was in danger. And coming back away from that situation and going into a normal shopping experience where people are just so careless about everything. You know, she talked about having a cart, you know, going around through the aisles of the grocery store and someone, you know, very carelessly ramming her cart. And, you know, for someone who's not experienced stress, you know, you just might just, you know, look at them a little odd. But for her, you know, that would sort of trigger, you know, danger. You know, why is this person running their cart into me? So just normal little experiences cause veterans who are experiencing post-traumatic stress to kind of numb themselves up so that they don't react every time something, you know, minor happens to them. And that emotional numbing can be a problem in many areas of their life. It can prevent them from really connecting with people who can really help them. Some other common coping mechanisms would be turning to substance abuse, to harming themselves, to seeking relief through inappropriate sexual relationships, or repeating the violence that's been perpetrated on them. Some of these persistent mental health issues continue to, you know, circulate in their lives. And I think one thing to keep in mind about recognizing these coping mechanisms is that sometimes when you're addressing someone who has substance abuse, you might be looking at it as an issue of, you know, helping someone, you know, take control over their life or maybe curbing their behavior. But for someone who is using substance abuse because it's helping them get through the day, and for a while might be a very successful technique in helping them get through that day. So addressing substance abuse gets to be bigger than just telling someone to refrain from drinking or putting them in a 12-step program. It involves recognizing that, you know, for a while, that was a very successful coping mechanism for them. And if you take that away, then, you know, the issues of the underlying trauma are going to be much harder for them to address. Trauma will influence everything that a woman who's experienced it will feel and will think. It will really change the way she views the world. And what's important for organizations to understand about working with people who've experienced military sexual trauma or post-traumatic stress is that it will impact the relationships that you have with the people that are coming to you for service. And it's very, very helpful for you as an organization to acknowledge that the people seeking services are looking at life very differently than you are, and that it's very, very helpful as an organization if you can take a step back and look at your organization the way those who are experiencing trauma are looking at your organization. And so trauma-informed care for an organization would mean taking some steps to be reflective and looking at how your organization is interacting with people who've experienced trauma on multiple different levels. I wanted to share this slide for you because, again, it came from one of our listening sessions. And it just is an important reminder that because it is so hard for the veterans to ask for help, when they show up on your door, they're at a very, very vulnerable stage. And that they've actually taken that step and asked you for help is really, really difficult for them. And so it's really, really important to have that first experience and connection with them be a really positive one. So here's sort of our definition of trauma-informed care. And, we wanted to, again, share this with you because what we're talking about is from an organizational perspective, taking everything we know about trauma-informed care and looking at how our organization is providing services to those people who've experienced trauma, and taking a look at how we are helping rebuild a sense of control and empowerment for those who've experienced trauma. There are 8 foundational principles of trauma-informed care. Here we've kind of provided, those 8 principles for you. In addition to understanding trauma and its impact, it is going to involve ensuring your organization is aware of safety issues that your consumers are coming to with. It's going to take a look at your organization and how you're, how you have diversity among your staff, not only from a racial and ethnic perspective, but from an age perspective, from a disability perspective, and also from an understanding of military cultural experiences. Trauma-informed care also is going to involve looking at how your consumer is in control and the choices that consumers have in accessing your services. It involves looking at the way that you govern your organization and how power is shared among your staff members. Trauma-informed care is going to also have you focus on not only the care that you're providing to your consumers at your level, but how that care is integrated with other services that they may be accessing. Another important principle of trauma-informed care is recognizing that people as human beings have important needs to be in relationship, and that relationships help the healing process. And then finally, recognizing that no matter how distraught someone appears when you first meet them, that the human spirit is amazingly resilient, and that recovery is possible for everyone, no matter how difficult their situation looks. The evidence of trauma-informed care is really, really strong. And again, this is another reason that we want to share this information with organizations, because we know that when women veterans receive trauma-informed care services, that they heal faster, that they're getting jobs faster, they're being able to maintain relationships in their lives and build really positive next steps, everything from their housing and holding on to their own jobs to making it possible for them to get through the day, the week, the month without needing all the extra services, and especially decreasing the numbers of crisis situations that they might encounter. Especially for women who are raising children, trauma-informed care helps them be better parents and helps them break sort of the cycle of transferring trauma onto the next generation. Now, the Trauma-Informed Care Guide has a self-assessment tool, and we hope that today's webinar will really help you take a look at that self-assessment tool and using it to really take a look at how your services are currently being experienced by women veterans, and to help you tailor your own programs so that you can pinpoint where you're doing really, really well and where there are some rooms to grow. And so the organizational self-assessment is important because it answers a lot of questions. It takes away any unknowing that might exist about how a veteran experiences your services, and it helps you, as an organization, come to some consensus about where you're really strong and where you can focus on staff development to get to another level. It's also important because it will give you an action plan so that you know that your organization is not just saying that it's committed to women veterans, but it's actually proactive in really taking some solid steps to make sure that you're putting your commitment to paper and in action. There are 6 domains on our self-assessment. They include staff development, creating safe and supportive environments, assessing and planning services involving consumers, adapting your policies, working with children. And it looks like we might have left off 2 of the other points, unless it's, yeah, it looks like this slide left off the final 2 points, which are actually adapting. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking here now to see that my numbering is off. So you do have all 6 policies. I apologize for my numbering error there. But, the domains of the self-assessment are going to take you through ways of assessing each of these areas so that you can really get a sense of how well you're doing on ensuring that your staff is well trained and well supported. It'll help you understand when a veteran comes into your doors, how safe they feel, how supportive is your environment. It's going to help you with assessing and planning your services, everything from taking a look at your intake forms and the goals that you have for your clients and how well you're doing in planning outcomes for them. It'll involve you looking at your policies and to seeing, where are policies good, but where can they be adjusted. And sometimes it can be very, very minor adjustments that can make a huge difference. And then finally, working with children. That's going to be an area that the self-assessment can help you identify if your services for children are adequate or if there's room to grow. Now, we sent you in the email that STAR sent out a handout that had an actual sample of the self-assessment. And on the trauma guide itself, there's a website that you can go to pull up the trauma guide and take the whole self-assessment. But I wanted to pause it here and just, if you have your handout available, it's called Supporting Staff Development, and just sort of talk you through what the self-assessment looks like. The first part of the self-assessment starts with supporting staff development and focuses on training and education. And as you're reading through the questions on the self-assessment, you're sort of asking, does my organization provide training on traumatic stress and its impact on the brain and body? That's the first question. The next question is, does my organization provide training on military sexual trauma and its impact? There are further questions on combat-related trauma, on complex trauma and its impact, on post-traumatic stress, on traumatic brain injury, on how trauma affects development, and on the relationship between childhood trauma and adult challenges. So you can tell by some of these topics that by giving this sort of organizational self-assessment to everyone on your staff, you're providing an input to take a snapshot of how your staff feels about their knowledge on these issues and how well your organization has done in providing training on some of these topics. So you may find out, for instance, that your organization is doing a really, really good job on providing general information about stress, but not necessarily on post-traumatic stress and how it can trigger, how it can be triggered and cause problems for someone. You may find out that your staff is really, really knowledgeable about Marines, but maybe not so knowledgeable about the differences between those who were in the Marines and those who were in the Navy. So there are many different areas where the self-assessment will help you pinpoint where the organization is really doing well and where you can really focus staff development and training to take your organization to the next level. After you take an organizational self-assessment, what you'll do is you'll compile all the results, and this is where you'll really focus on where there are strong disagreements and where there are strongly agrees. And one of the best ways to use the self-assessment is by compiling your results. This is like an example of a little tally sheet, and what we did here was we took the people who had responded to these questions and just tallied them up. So you can see, if you look in the middle box, what traumatic stress is, and you kind of follow along horizontally to the right of the screen. 10 people in that organization agreed that they felt the organization was training them on what traumatic stress was. 5 strongly agreed and 1 wasn't sure. If you go down to the other boxes, you can see that there were more questions on in this area where the staff members felt like they disagreed that they really had been provided information about traumatic stress and military sexual trauma. So if you were looking at a tally sheet for your organization, what you would do is sort of look at where are there areas where the staff is expressing that they haven't received this information. And that's how you target, okay, we need our next staff development to focus on military sexual trauma. And so hopefully the self-assessment will do that for you. It will help you really target your limited resources to where they can be most effective. Now we're going to take a break and take a poll question. And I'm going to have Anna do the poll question for you. And the question is, now that you're familiar with trauma-informed care, what next step will you take?
Great. Thanks, Kelly. Now I'm launching the poll question. Now that you're familiar with trauma-informed care, what next step will you take? Will you talk to others in your organization about taking the self-assessment? Will you take steps to creating a work group within your organization dedicated to taking the self-assessment and then determining how to respond to the results? Or are you just unsure at this time? Great. Looks like over half of you have responded. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the polls now because it looks like almost everybody voted. All right, we're going to close the polls at this time. The results have come in, and it looks like 61% said that they'll talk to others about taking the self-assessment. Now I'll go ahead and turn it back to Kelly.
Thanks, Anna. So if you've decided to take the self-assessment, That's just awesome. What do you do after that? We recommend that you use the guide and, let it guide you in all of the steps. The guide, in addition to providing the self-assessment, has 13 action steps that you can take to implementing a trauma-informed care policy program within your organization. And one of the things that we recommend is that you form a trauma working group, and that includes a representative from each area of your organization. And that this core group, interprets the results of the self-assessment. It strategizes about how to apply trauma-informed knowledge to all areas of the organization. And it looks at continuing education about trauma for all staff. And when we talk about all staff, one of the things that we want to emphasize is that this is not just for the counselors in the organization, or this isn't just for the people who do intake, but it's for everyone who has any kind of involvement in your organization. It includes the cleaning staff. If you have a food service, it includes those providing the food service. If you have any volunteers that are coming through your program, it includes involving your volunteers in your trauma-informed efforts as well. And it's, again, just sort of one way of getting everyone connected with your organization on board with your mission, and that is to help the women veterans heal and recover in the most efficient way possible. We have another poll question right now, and I'm going to, again, let Anna open this poll question up for you. How will you help the Women's Bureau share this guide with others? Anna, are you able to open the poll question?
Yes. Is it showing up on the screen? Okay, it looks like we have 74% of respondents answering right now. We'll wait a few more seconds. Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and close the polls. 81% of you said that you'll share the guide with service providers and other interested groups. And that's great news. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. So let's talk a little bit about the process of becoming trauma-informed. The guide will take you through some really great ideas for really engaging with this process. And one of the things it talks about is the importance of identifying leaders to champion the change. And it sounds like many of you have already embraced this and are the champions. So I thank you for that. Another way of ensuring that your organization becomes trauma-informed is to engage and train staff at all levels, to listen for when you have resistance to people who think they know it all, have seen it all, and done it all, and to help them grow and to help them recognize that, change is hard. We all know change is hard, but there's always room to grow, to learn new things, and to share what we know to make our program the best that it can be. Completing the self-assessment and analyzing the results, that process in itself is going to just be a huge consciousness-raising awareness for others. I had mentioned earlier that, all of us probably have some traumatic experiences in our lives, and I think when you take the self-assessment, all of a sudden a light bulb will go on, and you'll start recognizing experiences in your own lives that you may not have thought of before as being traumatizing. But it is a huge self-awareness about not only how we as individuals interact in the world, but raising our awareness about how others who are coming to us for help, how they are interpreting our program, our mission, and our services. Becoming trauma-informed is not just sort of one and done kind of a event. You don't just take the self-assessment and develop a plan and then you're done. It really is an ongoing process where your organization is making a commitment to continue to grow and to monitor how well you're doing and constantly sort of adjusting, tracking your results. And in terms of tracking your results, I mean, I know all organizations right now are really concerned about the bottom line, and that is, funding for our organizations. One of the things that the Trauma-Informed Care Guide can do for you is to help you better track your outcomes, increase the numbers of positive outcomes you have to track, and to show the organizations that you're seeking support from that your organization is really on target and that your clients and those who are coming to you for services are really having really positive experiences through your programs, and that you're really worthy of investments because you're doing such great things. So there's a little financial incentive in really embracing this process as well. These are most of the questions these are, most of the issues that we wanted to share with you today, and, to really introduce you to this topic and hopefully encourage you to sort of take the next step and take this self-assessment. But we recognize that, we may have triggered many questions for you, so we want to encourage you to use that question box and send us some questions along the way. Anna, do you already have questions that are open?
We do have one question, but I'd like to wait another minute to get more questions in. So just to start off, I wanted to ask you or let you answer a question that we frequently get about women veterans or organizations that serve women veterans. Sometimes they're concerned about management buy-in. So what would you say to organizations, what kind of advice could you give to organizations how to get their senior management to buy into trauma-informed care?
Thanks for raising that point. That is a question that we do get frequently because a lot of times we're engaged with the advocates and they feel like, they're really part of the process and they're on board, but they have this resistance from, the senior leaders who are so busy and sometimes removed from the day-to-day reality of the programs that, getting them to adopt something is harder. So I'd say, what we have found successful is that, actually asking your senior leaders for for a meeting where you can sit down and talk to them. You can take the Trauma-Informed Care Guide to them. You can tell them that as a result of your, relationship with Swords to Plowshares, you were able to attend this webinar and to get this information about trauma-informed care. And it has this really awesome self-assessment tool. And you'd like to then take a look at it and, to see, can this be something our organization can take? And if they're resistant, if they say no or not at this time or, we're so overwhelmed, let's get through this next quarter or whatever, is that you can say, fine, but, go back to them. In the meantime, you as a leader within your individual unit can maybe do sort of a pilot program where you can start small with the people that you work with on a regular basis and encourage them to do the self-assessment, get them talking, and see if there are maybe small changes that you can make on an individual unit that might capture the attention of others in your agency when they see the positive things going on in your unit. But probably the most important thing is just don't ever take no for an answer. If they say no, this week, in 3 months, ask them again, hey, when are we going to talk about trauma-informed care? And just keep after them about it. Any other questions?
Great. Thanks, Kelly. We do have a question. As an organization that establishes safe relationships with their clients through initial intake assessment, they learn about women veterans' military experience and their current employment and housing situation. How can an organization gain insight on whether or not they've experienced MST without offending the women veteran?
Oh, that's a really important question, and it shows that you're already being really sensitive to the issues. one way is just by introducing the topic on a general scale, and to say that, you know, our organization understands that many women who've been in the military have experienced military sexual trauma. And I'm curious, you know, your reaction to that. I know sometimes sexual harassment can be just as difficult to deal with as an actual assault. How do you feel about your experience in the military on this topic? And to sort of broach it maybe around the edges, or to say, you know, to sort of ask the question, is this a subject that you're comfortable discussing with us? Is this an area where you'd like some more information? And really sort of take your lead from the client to broach the topic very, very generally, and to, you know, give them a chance to respond by saying, yes, I want to talk about this. Yes, I want more information. Or sometimes that, you know, the tears will just start, and they'll just start crying, and it'll be very obvious that they've had some kind of experience, either personally or maybe through, you know, someone they know that they've witnessed someone really struggle with this issue. So I would say, you know, that would be the way, is to introduce the topic on a general basis, and then invite them to share how they're feeling about it and whether they want to, you know, share more information about it. But always on this topic, provide the information and take your lead from the client.
Great, thanks, Kelly. At this time, we don't have any other questions, but another frequently asked question that we've come across is, why should service providers direct women to the VA if they continue to have negative experiences with their services?
That's a really important point, too. And we find, you know, two things, is that one, the women veteran may be showing up to your door before she's ever gone to VA because, again, she has this negative perception. She's trying to put as much distance between her and the military as possible, and the VA just, you know, reminds her that experience. Or the other is, you know, they've been to the VA once, and they've been feeling so overwhelmed and out of place that they don't want to go back. But the VA is the important organization that can provide really vital services for the women veterans, and can help you as an organization coordinate the care that the women veterans receive. So finding out, you know, the experiences with the VA are really important. And then linking back to the women vet coordinators that are at the VA that's closest to your organization, and really developing a relationship with those women veteran coordinators so that you can feel confident that there is someone at the VA that you can refer your clients back to that will take care of them. There's someone that you can, you know, integrate their care with, and that you can feel confident that they're not sort of going to be lost in the shuffle. So that would be sort of the first step, is identifying who are the women veteran coordinators in your community, and really understanding what kind of services to expect for your clients from the VA. And then to listen very carefully to what the women veterans say about the VA, because if they're still telling you that the Veterans Administration, you know, isn't helpful, isn't being supportive, then that's something that the VA, you know, needs to be held accountable for. Part of their agenda this year is recognizing that women veterans are a growing number of their consumers, and that they need to be responsive to those consumers. So any feedback that you can provide to them, any help that you can give to the VA to make sure that they're treating women with, you know, sensitivity and with, you know, important targeted services, especially on women's health services, will be greatly welcomed.
Thanks, Kelly. Okay, we have another question. As a rape crisis center, we provide services to the entire county, which translate into a diverse client population. We recently began a female veteran-specific program. Would it be harmful to include community clients with female veterans in programming community events, or is it advised to keep it separate?
That's a really good question. I think if you have a critical mass of women veterans, you can, definitely want to think about the advantages of offering women veteran-only services. But it's also important to recognize that the women veterans themselves are going to be integrating eventually, into the community, and that if you can help them, make those relationships within the community, particularly with other women who've experienced similar types of issues, maybe not in the military, but on a different level, could be helpful. So I'd say, two things. One, it's fine if you have one or two women veterans to integrate them into the services. But once you start getting a critical mass of women veterans, then that's the time to think about, services for them just as a group. But, by all means, include the women veterans in the other services you already have. I guess just a point of clarification would be that those program leaders that are, running those other services, you want to include them in your trauma-informed care outreach efforts, and so that they're involved in your whole process of becoming a trauma-informed care organization.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. It looks like we don't have any questions, but if you happen to think of any questions after the webinar, please feel free to contact myself or Kelly, and feel free to contact Star as well, and she could pass along that information to us.
Thanks, Anna. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Star.
Thank you both so much. That concludes the presentation part of our webinar. Thank you so much to our presenters, Anna Fortes and Kelly Jenkins-Poltz, and to you, our participants. Please note that each of you will receive an email with a web link to evaluate this presentation. Your feedback is important to us and is greatly appreciated. At this time, Star Lara, Swords to Plowshares Program Manager for Women Veterans and Community Outreach and Education, will give you a few updates about some of the upcoming conferences, trainings, and retreats, as well as questions or concerns about the grant reports.
Good morning. I hope you all enjoyed the webinar of Trauma-Informed Care hosted by Kelly as well as Anna. On this slide, you'll see some of the upcoming events hosted by our grantees. The California State University in Stanislaus will be hosting their Women's Warrior Conference in February, and this will be happening in Turlock, California. California Assistance Foundation will present the Kern County Women Veterans Stand-Up. That's happening on February 22nd. Farmer Veteran Coalition, they'll be conducting a Women Veterans Conference, which will focus on financial independence and networking in Davis, California. Honoring the Path of the Warrior will be hosting their 3rd annual Women Veterans Retreat, and that will happen in June from the 23rd through the 27th. Reigns of Hope will be hosting their Warriors in Power retreat. This is second in the series of retreats, and that will be happening on February 24th. In addition, the California Women's Law Center will be conducting focus groups over the next couple of months across California. They need help identifying locations for focus groups and women vets to participate. They are able to offer $500 donations to organizations that can offer space and help identify women veterans to participate. In addition, they are offering $50 gift cards and childcare for women veterans who have a couple of hours of their time to talk about their healthcare needs and experiences in the focus group. They are looking for women veterans who do not currently receive healthcare from the VA, and they are particularly interested in speaking with rural veteran women. If you or someone you know might be interested in assisting, please get in touch with Cecilia Kim at 323-951-9642. I will be sending out this information along with the upcoming events at the end of the webinar. At this time, we'll take any questions or comments in regards to our upcoming midterm conference or grant reporting period. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of a screen freeze.
Hi, Star. Can you hear me? This is Megan.
Hi, Megan.
Hi. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to let you all know the upcoming mid-year grant report is due on January 31st. It serves as a check-in halfway through the grant, but by no means does it mean that you have to be halfway through your milestones or spend half of your dollars. It's simply a check-in on the progress of your projects and what successes, challenges, or needs you may have. It's also a way for us to keep our funder, the California Wellness Foundation, informed of how the projects are coming along. If you guys have any questions about that, feel free to email me. And there is a grant report template that was emailed out to you with your New Year's email from us. And I can resend that out this week to you all if you still need that. It was also included with the hard copy of your grant agreement. So if there are any questions about that, you can either email me or you can ask right now, and we'd be happy to answer that for you.
This is Amy. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes.
Okay, great. I also wanted to add, as far as the reporting is concerned, that you know, one of the really unique aspects of this project and the fact that Wellness decided to reach out in this way is to gather information. So when we have all of the reports from the midterm reports and from the final reports and from you know, other sort of research and outreach that we're doing, we do plan to put together best practices and a needs assessment for women generally. So I want to say that we all know that this is it's new territory for many people. It's an area that hasn't had a lot of devoted research or attention paid to it. So, you know, we're looking for, you know, successes, but also the struggles in trying things that didn't necessarily work. So I just wanted to sort of reiterate in the reporting that, you know, problems encountered and talking about that, that's really welcome, because we're trying to figure out what we can do in the future, how we can inform funders about, you know, what does work. So I just wanted to add that in.
And another thing, too, and Star, I don't want to put you on the spot, but one thing that has come up in the reports so far is that, you know, there's a challenge of recruiting women veterans to participate in their programs. And that's something that, you know, we see across the board. Whether they don't self-identify as a veteran or they're single mothers with small children, shuffling priorities without a lot of time to participate. And, you know, I thought maybe, Star, you could sort of discuss a little bit, and I know we've talked about it a lot, but some successful outreach methods to recruit women veterans in programs. Star? Maybe Star's having some problem with audio.
Yeah, I think she said her computer froze.
Okay. Well, one thing that I've noticed that, you know, the Women's Law Center has done. Oh, yes, hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, sorry about that. You know, what I have found from my end in working with other organizations as well as with other women veterans is that the real key to having a buy-in is being able to interact with someone at the organization that either is dedicated to assisting that particular population's needs, or what is even better is if there is someone on staff or who is a volunteer that is a woman veteran and that has shared that experience. So especially when you think of somebody who might be in some type of trauma recovery, who has experienced sexual assault, having a group or a peer support mentor who has that shared experience, who can relate to not only the experience, but the pathway to recovery and the pathway to healing, and providing that resource and having someone who is willing to share their experience and, really be the one-on-one connection with women who are reluctant to seek services. So if you're an organization that does not have any women veterans on staff and you do not have the capacity or just don't have the opportunity to have a woman veteran who is willing to volunteer and help out, another thing is you can look towards your staff and find out who is the most knowledgeable in the subject matter, who has the most empathy and who works really well on direct services and client relationships, and appoint them as the individual coordinator for women veterans. You can post that information on a particular place on your website, give direct links to an email, maybe even a phone number, so that when people are looking for that information through your print materials, flyers, and other resources, that they know that that topic area is a priority in the organization, so much so that they have a dedicated person who is there to help out. And that we have found that organizations that meet that additional goal have a much better chance at not only recruiting women veterans to participate, but to keep them active and engaged after, and encouraging them to then pay it forward and become more active in the advocacy roles and helping pay it forward to other women veterans who are experiencing the same needs.
And another thing that I've noticed that some of the grantees are doing to help recruit female veterans is, providing child care for, some of the events, or transportation costs if some of them are having trouble reaching the centers. And, if that's something that's coming up for you, and, maybe you didn't list it in your budget or your proposal, but it's something that you might need to shuffle around, you can certainly talk to us about, ways to include that in your project, and other, outreach methods that you might ideas that you might have or questions that you might have for us, you can definitely reach out to us and ask us about. There's another question that came in. Are there any specific indicators that are being noted in the report questions? And are there any specific survey questions provided by California Wellness that would best capture those indicators? So what we did with our reporting template is we kept it pretty closely aligned to the California Wellness reporting template. And it's pretty open-ended. So, it's just providing a brief description of your progress, and if you've met any of your original objectives, then listing them, listing any surprises, challenges, or any changes that you would want to make for the remainder of the grant term. And, the only specific information that we really want to capture is, how many female veterans you've served thus far, as well as key influencers, so family members, providers, et cetera. And if you have any demographic and outcome data on those women veterans in your programs, then to include that, because that's really important for us to capture as well. And then finally, if there are any publications or, articles, media articles that are on your program, then you can also include that in the report as well. So yeah, that's
and I
the
think
only questions that have come in so far.
Just to add to that, our aims, aside from meeting the deliverables that we're required to deliver to wellness, our aim is to improve care for women veterans in California and elsewhere. So aside from the requirements, we're also interested in taking this information and using it more broadly for public policy. So, we may take some of the information and not necessarily be, specifically pointing out an organization, but use that to educate philanthropists, policymakers, to encourage more funding that's women-specific, because I think, we all know, and individually and collectively, that it's tough to raise money for women's services. And so, we want to get the most out of this that we can to move the ball forward in this area, because it's only a need that's going to grow in the coming years.
So I don't see any additional questions coming in. But I did want to sort of pose a question to the group. If anyone would like to discuss some of their successes or challenges in their project thus far, or anything that they would like to do differently for the remaining part of the grant as a result of any challenges or anything that they've observed in the project thus far, if they might want to talk about that to the group.
Well, while we're waiting for someone to raise their hand, this is Star. Amy and Megan, one of the questions that I've received several emails about directly in response to the request for participation in the webinar are people who are wondering about future grants by California Wellness, or what other funding opportunities may be available in the future.
Amy, do you want to handle that?
Yeah. I mean, we have no indication that wellness themselves would necessarily continue. We've never been told that. We'll, of course, encourage them to. We also are, looking into and doing what we can in terms of the world of philanthropy to encourage that. So, we do know that there have been a couple of small foundations that have been interested. Aetna, there's some bigger funders out there who are developing more of an interest in women. So I don't know. I mean, that's the answer. And there's no, at this stage, there's no reason to believe that we would have an additional grant from wellness, but we'll obviously be trying to.
And also the whole idea of re-granting programs it's sort of a new phenomenon, and I think more funders are getting into the idea of re-granting, and certainly I think it adds to knowing the culture, having someone who knows the culture, who knows the needs on the ground, that can inform the funder of those needs and also serve as a technical advisor to grantees that are implementing the projects. So I think as we move along, the idea might take shape in more funders' eyes, and certainly California Wellness can champion that idea to other funders as well. That's what we're hoping for.
Well, and also, again, the results that we find, from these initial grants in terms of what's out there. If we know that that outreach, for example, remains an issue, much of the literature talks about women's reticence to seek help and women veterans' reticence to seek help through the traditional means, or if they're going through the world of women's services to identify as a veteran. So, I mean, I think, we can use the difficulty to also point out that this is an area that needs a lot of growth and needs a lot of work in order for us to crack that nut. Mm-hmm. So yes, I mean, anything that we glean will be going towards trying to get more funding.
And it looks like Annie has raised her hand. So Annie, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, and hopefully that'll work. So if you have a question, you can talk now. Hello, Annie. If your audio isn't working, then you can always type a question into your sidebar, and we can answer it as well.
Annie just posted a message saying that her audio isn't currently working. And so we'll wait for her to pose her question in the questions block. But Jennifer has asked, As a program, I have outreach to various community colleges and universities, public and private, to have them disseminate information to their student veterans. And that is one of the ways that she has done outreach. CSU Stanislaus has had a difficulty bringing student women vets to specific lunches, meditation circles on campus during school hours. As a commuter campus, it has been difficult to gauge best times. A core group of women vets dependents, depending on about 7 or so, are developing a student group on campus to outreach to other women vets, dependents, and spouses. So that's just one thing that CSU Stanislaus is doing in order to try something a little bit more untraditional to outreach to veterans on their campus. And moving on, Annie was able to post her question. She says, we have experienced many issues with engaging with building collaborative relationships with other veteran service agencies. Sometimes the issues seem sort of territorial. We already do that, or we should refer veterans to you as a question mark. And those types of responses during their outreach to other veterans organizations. Is there any advice on strengthening these relationships?
I was just going to say, that's not entirely surprising. There's definitely barriers between veteran services and civilian services, just as there are, with bringing the cultures together. As far as, Star, do you have?
Hi, this is Star. So yes, we find that happens throughout the nation when it comes to some organizations really focused on the numbers. I personally believe that an individual and a veteran who can take and participate in different programs through different organizations may find the opportunity to find the organization that is a good fit for them. So what I have found to be the most helpful is to identify where another organization shares some of your same duties or your same programs, but then to just collaborate and try to find, and it takes a lot of patience, but to find out where your programs differ. And then to see how you can, develop a stronger relationship with that organization based on, your commonalities and your differences. It's not an easy endeavor, but the more the other organization can have a trust and faith in you, then they will turn around and they will provide that same effort and energy back. But it's not something that happens overnight.
Well, and also I think, depending on what exactly you're asking for the outreach for, so Annie is with Central Valley Health Network, so, and I'm not sure exactly, what you're asking to refer people for. So, one is, either if in the notes you could sort of talk a little bit more about that now, but, certainly in the cases of veterans organizations like Swords to Plowshares or others, if veterans are unbenefited or if they are reticent to go to the VA, health services, should be welcoming. So, maybe framing it in a way that what you're doing is providing a service, is helping them, that you're going as a partner. I think there is sometimes, paranoia about, territory, client territory, because people might be trying to, needing to meet goals. So, thinking carefully about how you can be a question, how you can offer something to not only the veterans who serve that organization, but to the organization, if that helps at all. and knowing a little bit more about exactly what you're looking to them for would be, also helpful. And for anyone on the line, Annie and anyone else, always feel free to call Star or me or Megan just to, to brainstorm, to talk about issues like this, and we'll see what we can do.
All right. This is Star again. We have another comment from Jennifer. She says, we have also developed a PowerPoint presentation to present to faculty members and professors. This was not widely supported, so we have collaborated with the Faculty Development Center to bring the Department of Labor Women's Bureau and the presentation you guys just heard to our conferences to provide the trauma-informed training to a larger audience of faculty members interested in the topic. They have 2 more presentations that are registered to the state. So it's another initiative that CSU Stanislaus is projecting out to the population to help raise awareness about veteran services and address that culture on the campus. And so, Megan, Jennifer's last question is there something that you would have along with the report? Is there something that you would like to have along with the report?
Yeah, like we said, if there's any products from the grant, so a copy of any significant publications, any reports or policy briefs or outreach materials that you've used in your project, you can feel free to attach those with the report. But yeah, we aren't really asking for anything else specific. But we're always, happy to learn about your programs, and, any information that you guys can provide would be great for us to see.
So her follow-up question is whether we would like the PowerPoint. And Jennifer, the answer is no, we actually have the PowerPoint, but any additional trainings outside of the information that is circulated through some of the other grantees would be really appreciated, or any other outreach efforts that you have found to be successful or helpful. And Jennifer says thanks.
And yeah, like I said, I'll email you all with a copy of the template, the report template, and it is due on the 31st. So, and if you guys have any questions at all about it, just feel free to email me or call me.
Also, if anyone wants more information about those events that Star talked about in terms of finding out eligibility or how your clients can apply, for example, for the retreats, just get a hold of Star and she can get that information to you. Also, in your guidebook that we sent, you'll find in the capsule reviews of each agency and what they're doing, there's key contacts there. So, please take advantage of that and learn from one another about resources as well.
Star, I'm not getting any questions. I don't know if my computer is slow, but
I don't have any questions either.
Okay.
Got a lot of people who are unattentive. So we may have began to lose a little bit of attention.
Well, I guess that means that we answered everyone's questions, so that's
good. Yes. And also, I want to thank everyone for their time.
Thank you, Amy and Megan. Also, thank you, Kelly McFarland and Kevin Miller, for your technical assistance and helping with the beginning portion of the presentation. If there are any further questions, please, you can respond to any of the emails about the webinar. You can contact me via email, or you can give me a call at 415-655-7252. Again, thank you all for your participation.
And then quickly, Star, the next webinar is the legal services?
Yes, I forget the date, so thanks for making me look unprepared.
No, that's okay.
That information will be sent out following this webinar. and you will continue to receive harassing emails from me.
And that webinar is on access to benefits, correct?
Yes, VA compensation and pension and access for benefits.
Yes.
So thank you all for your time. This concludes the webinar. You may now disconnect.